Alright, we're gonna get going because we don't have a response from Lucas, and I guess we'll call the meeting to order. I didn't really have a plan of exactly, I didn't think I was running the meeting, but I could probably turn it over to Kevin, because Kevin's been in contact with all of you and kind of talk about how we like to go about it, talk about our concerns, or just overview the project, or thoughts?
Well, you wanna introduce everybody?
Yeah, that'd be a good idea, let's introduce everybody, thank you.
If you want Wyatt to take the lead and.
I'm Wyatt Hanson, I'm the Devils Lake District here in town, DOT, District Engineer.
I'm Jane Berger. I'm the Project Programming Division Director for the DOT out of the central office in Bismarck.
Hi, I'm Kurt Kopp. I'm the design engineer for the DOT central office in Bismarck.
Chad Orn, I'm with the DOT in Bismarck, Project Development Director. Basically oversee most of the pre-construction activities that we do at the department.
I'm Kevin Fielson with the Ramsey County Highway.
And I'm Jeff Frith, we've all introduced and.
Ed Brown, I travel this road every day. My family travels it a lot, so.
Okay.
Candy Christopherson, auditor.
And I'm Adam Lightman. I guess I'm the vice chair of the commission, so. From there, I guess we called this meeting or asked for this meeting because we've had a lot of concerns voiced to us locally from citizens that drive that road all the time, as well as have businesses out there or live along the road. Obviously, you guys are all aware, there's a lot of housing development out there, a lot of business development down the highway that way. We went to the, was it the meeting in, I can't remember the dates now, but when we had the meeting out at High Plains, there was a lot of, it was interesting learning about what the project plan was and what the ideas were. But there was a lot of concerns at that point voiced already about the amount of change, so to speak, I guess. I don't know the technical term, but the J terms, obviously, were a large part of point of contention and concern. And we've heard a lot of it from our local citizens and people that drive the road, so we thought we would visit with you all and determine, voice our concerns first, and then determine what the steps are and what the process is going to be for development time. We've kind of got the overview, I guess, of the meeting out there that day, but we're kind of hoping we can step in and maybe try to have a little bit of input, a little more than we've had up to this point. So, anything you guys have got?
Well, I think obviously we're all, concerned over the safety of people traveling up and down the roads, and we want to make sure that they do that in a safe manner. We're just not 100% convinced that the J turns are the right answer, that maybe safety concerns can be addressed on that stretch of roads without going with that type of a system. We have a lot of people concerned with the length of trailers, trying to make those turns back and forth, and getting up to speed and different things like that they would create more hazards than what they're preventing. And I thought this was a pretty interesting sheet, so I made some copies. This is one of the sheets that was handed out at one of the meetings, the public meetings at High Plains Equipment, and I made enough copies. Gives the crash data and the potential for solutions for right angle crashes.
Thank you.
And so it has a very interesting diagram of the J turns within there. And I'm just wondering, talking with various people and thinking about it myself, and could those turn lanes be made longer, wider to accommodate for semi-agriculture equipment, either turning in or turning onto, making either a deceleration lane or an acceleration lane as you turn out into oncoming traffic, have a lane where it's kind of just you, and as you move up to speed, then you can merge over into oncomings, you know, traffic at a higher rate of speed kind of thing. You know, that, and because they don't know, you know, obviously, you know, lessen the access points, frontage roads, things like that. I don't know if there's room on any side of the highway for some of the, you know, proposed, put a frontage road in. I think, commercial access has taken up a lot of that space already, so I think that probably would be off the table. But certainly maybe wider, turning lanes could be a potential, for, instead of a J-turn. But I don't know if you guys are completely 100%, this is the design we come up with, this is what we're gonna sell on. Or, you know, but certainly a concern.
Couple things I would add. You know, these J-turns sound like a quick fix. I don't- Is there any in North Dakota? Does anybody know?
Well, I think there's some on more commercial residential sides of like 32nd and Grand Forks. I think there's some, I think maybe on 13th Avenue in Fargo, there may be some. But as far as major 4-lane highways, I don't know if there would be any in North Dakota, is there?
So can we keep this informal, or you do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know, chairman, vice chairman.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, when it comes to like state highways, we don't have any, well, you call them J-turns, you call them arc cuts, now I think we're calling them RCIs, the reduced conflict intersections. It's all the same type of thing, but Fargo for sure, I know they put one down on 52nd Avenue, just west of the Walmart there, and they have, you know, the big bulb out area for the trucks to turn around and stuff like that. Just south where my brother lives actually, so I drive it quite a bit. But, and I think what you're referring to probably up in Grand Forks and stuff are probably in pseudo arc cuts or RCIs that we have, but on our current state system, we currently don't have any in our state. There's a couple areas where we're proposing them. It's not like Dove's Lake's the only area where there's a couple areas that we're working through on this, but they're heavily used in Minnesota and quite a few other states. We don't have them here yet. Jay, anything to add to that?
Yeah, they've also been used on other parts of the country for many, many years. I was, a few years ago, we were talking, the district engineer and I were talking to the Minot Air Force Base, because we were looking at some solutions. They had some backing up problems with entering the air base on US 83 north of Minot. We didn't end up doing it because they ended up doing some internal, they had some problems with their hills or the entry into the base, so they actually did some on-site things. But I thought it was interesting because we were talking about an option to do that there, and one of the head people at the Air Force Base, he said, and we were talking about that there would have to be some education, and it would be one of the first ones on the state highway. And he looked at me and he said, "What?" He goes, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, we don't have one of these on the state highway." He was from the East Coast, and he said these have been around forever. He goes, "I didn't even think about this being something new."
He was from the East Coast.
Yeah, he was from the East Coast. They have a lot of them in states going to the east. That's, I think Michigan was one of the further west of the east states that was really, really heavily, where they have many, many corridors too. Sometimes you just see one. I think in Fargo, like 52nd Avenue, they did it as a corridor approach of multiple intersections. So that'd be kind of similar to here.
I've just had an enormous amount of people contact me and they're not in favor of J-turn. Undoubtedly it's something new. And it's new to me. But
It's
Well,
new.
and frankly, when that guy said it too, I was surprised because I expect people to have questions, to have some concerns because it's new to us.
Yes.
And frankly, it is to us.
It's good,
too,
it's
so
good that people are concerned.
Yes.
Really good, really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we would say we're gonna do this, I
I'd
would
be
say great.
surprised if you were
Yeah,
like,
I
hey,
mean,
great.
You're familiar, I'm assuming you're familiar with roundabouts. I think this first roundabout that we put in the state was in 2011, 10, somewhere right around there. And it was just south of Killdeer on Highway 200 and Highway 22. And let me tell you, that wasn't the first one we tried a couple of them, but there was resistance to that from the city, from the people, from the truck drivers, from everybody. Truck can't drive roundabouts, you can't plow roundabouts, nobody will know how to drive a roundabout, and all these things. And there was a lot of pressure and concerns, and we felt it was the right thing to do, and we pushed forward with that. And we've actually had the mayor and a lot of people say we were wrong. They say, that's a great fix. And since then, I think we've added, I think we're up to 12 or 13 of them. And there are a lot of them in
On the
just
state system.
state
yeah.
system in rural areas. Obviously, some of the towns have them too, but there was resistance, and we still get some of that. Not gonna lie, we still get some with the roundabouts, but there's a lot of people that are saying, hey, that's a good thing, it's becoming acceptable. So we fully expect with these RCIs that it was, oh, something new and you're gonna try it and you wanna try it here? Oh, that's great, bring it in. You know, no, we don't expect, I mean, there's gonna be questions, there's gonna be some hesitation to it all, but it's not something that hasn't been tried and true and studied throughout the nation, throughout the world. And depending on what kind of safety concerns you have or what you're seeing out there, it can be the right fix for it. And that's something is like, what are some of the, you mentioned the word safety concerns, what are some of the safety concerns? What are the things that are concerning you about this corridor, mainly up to probably towards the rest area? What are you seeing, or what's concerning?
I'll comment on the roundabouts in Carrington.
Yeah, that's one of them.
It's a great fix. I mean, I was through it numerous times before it was done.
And, you know,
Now it's like the first time I went through it now, where do I go now? And then, oh, okay.
and that's on the heavy,
Heavy truck route, heavy
Yeah,
high truck route.
that's
because
on the
of
heavy high truck route.
Big one.
Yeah, and we designed it to
Accommodate.
accommodate those, so it can be done, it can be done.
A lot of trucks go into that truck stop.
Yep, truck stops, and then we have some bigger trucks or wider crews, large loads and stuff. 200 is usually one that carries some larger loads, because interstate has limitations.
Very busy.
Yep.
And just to add on what you said, like Killdeer was the first one, and there was a lot of apprehension on that. You know, now we built the Killdeer bypass around it, and on both ends of that,
Two more.
because they like it so much.
They got 3
You know,
killers.
something new, with a lot of resistance, but once it goes, people learned it, and it increased the safety, it increased the function of that intersection. That thing was backed up, at certain times we've seen for miles, people would take pictures, and people stopped, and once that thing came in, the traffic was still heavy, but it still moved. The backup was much left, and traffic still kept on moving, they weren't stopped, so you lost a lot of complaints, so.
I think you guys agree with me and gals, but the roundabouts seem to slow traffic down. It's still moving, but it slows it down. Now the J-turns, I'm afraid somebody's gonna just stop, and that's not the thing you wanna do. You know, you gotta keep moving until they get used to them, but.
The J-turn's basically, it's like a turn lane. You decelerate, you turn in, you decelerate, you have a lane, decelerate, and you do your turn. But the big thing with the J-turn is, or the RCR, sorry, we've got 10 names for them. The big thing is you don't have to make multiple decisions. You don't have to try to judge traffic coming from your left and judge traffic coming from your right. You only have to make a decision about what's coming from my left, and then you go and then you worry about what's coming from your right. You don't have to worry about, if you got a longer vehicle, getting stuck in that median. And that's a big thing. When I was part of the design team that designed US 2 here through Devil's Lakes. If you don't like it, don't tell me. But part of the work on that, and once we did that with the medians and all that, they were having issues with people that didn't know how to drive that, and they would get out, they would make a left turn, and they'd get stuck out there, and then their back end would lean out into the driving lane, 2 lanes, and so they're asked, well, what can we do? So I helped try to put together, we put out a press release or something to try to you know, the drawings to get people how to drive them. Because that's a big concern, and generally you wanna clear the whole area. But it's tough to make both those judgments at one time. And the point of the RCI is you take away having to judge a traveler from one direction traveler and gauge what the speeds are and that type of thing. And that's why sometimes, it can even be faster to have to go down to turn to come back. Plus, we obviously feel it's safer.
Where do you think they're gonna stop? Like, when you said you're afraid drivers are
Well,
gonna stop, where,
you know, I suppose initially they'll drive down to the J-turn, and when they turn onto
when they make
traffic.
the U,
the, you know, they make the U-turn or
yeah,
whatever, left turn or whatever you're gonna do. And, are they gonna try to go, or you're gonna take the crossing out, so it won't even be there, so they can't even get on the other lane unless they come back.
Mhm.
yep.
Mhm.
I think one thing with, just personally, I think with the RCIs is you look at the drawing and it looks confusing. But I think that oftentimes, I think we do this in some urban areas on our own. Do you ever take a right to avoid taking a left because you don't want to come out at a certain area? But I think that the drawing looks confusing, but once you're physically driving it, you do what the movements that are there that are available to do, right? You follow the sign,
You essentially can make a J-turn, like you said, turning right instead of left at like College Drive at about 3:30 when the high school kids are coming down College Drive and you can't get on. You turn right and then you turn left and then you turn right again.
exactly.
You roll around the run because you can't get on, and that's the same concept.
gotta do
You've
it.
just done a J-turn, you probably didn't even think
Yeah,
about it.
I've done that several times, but my question would be like, so on the J-turn, how long is the collection lane before you make the U-turn back onto the other highway run?
I have those.
That's
And
why
what-
this is deceiving.
Yeah, and what's the turning radius, cause my main concern is this, I farm. And when you're pulling an air seeder, and you got the cart way out back, you're gonna get into that J-turn. And you might get your whole rig into the J-turn. But to make that radius turn, you're gonna have to pull out into that lane of traffic and pull around. So I'm not concerned about the tractor operator, they'll get through there, that ain't a problem. But the person behind you coming down the road at 70 miles an hour not paying attention, when you have to pull out to make that radius cut and that cart goes out into that lane of traffic. We've already seen that out on Highway 2 multiple times where people have rear-ended discs and air seeders and things like that, and I'm wondering, is it gonna increase rear end type collisions instead of, and those maybe won't be as bad,
You know,
but will it?
the length of these things, the length of them are determined, you know, by the speed limit. So the length will be enough to accelerate and or to decelerate. But the widths can be, we can design anything to fit any type of a vehicle. You know, that there, you look at, there's some Shyway there, you know, coming out of the implement dealer. We drove into the implement dealer's yard. They got some air seeders in the back, they got combines, and you're thinking about those types of things, those wide vehicles and those long vehicles coming out of there. You know, you can, in these situations where you know you have that type of movements, you can have that little Shyway away from the through lane, so you can get them completely out of the through lanes when they get in that left lane, and then you can have that bulb out on the other side to make sure that you can make that maneuver.
Okay.
You know, and the design vehicle that we use is a WB67, and I know that probably doesn't mean much to you, but it's generally a tractor, trailer combination 53 feet. Is generally what that is. And it's your conventional long, I'll say your high trailers that you see on the road, but it's also contains your triaxles. And I see what they had out there, the triaxle equipment trailer. And I actually zoomed in on Google Earth last week before we came, and it's amazing how you can zoom right in. Your wife don't do that for them. I zoomed right into the implement dealer. They had the tractor trailer hooked up to and I measured it as best I could on Google, and it was 53 feet.
It's 53.
It was 53 feet, so it's right at the design vehicle that we're using, you know, we can go bigger. If we know that there's super loads and stuff, I mean, we can make these radiuses fit the needs. They don't necessarily all have to be the same. If you have someone going into a residential area, we don't have that, but in a situation like that where you got agricultural equipment that's being pulled by conventional tractors or tractor trailers, we can design that if we know that that's there.
The bulb out looks kind of like see, that's something that I had,
Yeah,
that looks like it might be something that, cause then it's almost like the same concept of an acceleration lane
Yes.
where you turn around and you can accelerate to meet traffic speed before you get back
And
on.
when we did Carrington, we actually got their design vehicles from them and we ran the turning movements on them. So we got, where the big truck companies come through, they give us a layout of what it was and we laid it out and we got it's called auto turn system.
So it lays a template on where
Template where we can run vehicles and we ran it, so.
So we'd wanna work with you on that when we
Yes.
get to the design phase to make sure you're comfortable that we're accommodating what's there. I mean, we can make adjustments.
We mentioned speed here 3-4 times now, what's it gonna be? You're not gonna leave it at 70 miles an hour. And that's not what the people wanna hear. But I gotta bring it up.
Yeah, it's, we'll go back, just to step back, there's been, we got hit, Ramsey County has, there's been a letter campaign between the county and the city, the county and the state. We've asked for speed reductions, we've done the speed studies, we've looked at it, it hasn't been warranted to do, and ultimately what started this whole project, it started off with the current commission writing a letter, and then some members of the Ramsey County Commission came to Bismarck and they met with our leadership and they said, you need to do something, here were concerns. And the concerns we heard were the right angle crashes in the vehicles that hang out over into the road, that was overhang. So then we went into this access management study that we went through and tried to engage people, and we kept rolling through, and we've been probably on this since I think 2012, 2014, this has been going on, as we've rolled through it. Now, Jane's more the speed limit specialist, but I would say generally, you want to change the speed, you want to have something change conditions, something that acknowledges there's a reason to drop the speed. If you just drop it and say you're going to drive that, you're not going to drive. You got to have some type of reason to somebody to say, oh, something's different, something's changed that I should drive the speed limit. Because otherwise, you're going to have people driving faster than what you think. And then it comes to this gap. Then it gets even harder with these, when you got to make these left turns, because now you got to judge the speed coming from one direction and speed from another direction. Are they driving 70 or are they driving 60? Then you got differential, and then that's where it gets tricky. Obviously, you probably won't be surprised that when you do this study, people are driving faster than the speed limit out there, but probably say it's pretty common in most places. But anything that
Not always.
Not always, but
It goes back to the context. I mean, we're all human, right? And we drive what we, in the absence of law enforcement, we should put that in there. If law enforcement is there, you generally follow the speed limit that is posted. In the absence of law enforcement, most people drive what they feel comfortable driving, given the width of the road, the sight distance, how far they can see, what's on the side of the road, is there development, is there an open field, how wide is the shoulder? I mean, you do it, right? You drive what feels comfortable. And just putting up a sign, I mean, we've had this, people want us to go put a sign up. Lower the speed limit, go put a sign up. Well, we can do that, but that doesn't mean the behavior is gonna change. That's unless there's constant law enforcement, and we know that there's not resources to do that.
We need some traffic calming elements.
That's exactly what it's called in the traffic engineering world. Yep.
I mean, you
It's-
need to plant some trees
And-
or something, but then the snow is a problem, so.
And just by itself, a J-turn is not a traffic calming device. It doesn't necessarily. Now, we did have a conversation out on the way up here, and I'm gonna say there's something that came up that I didn't think of before, but I feel like mine. But keep in mind, we haven't done one of these before like this in a suburban, rural kind of area, but we talked about lighting these. So I got on with our traffic ops engineer on the way up and I said, would we light these? And he said yes,
Put lights up.
street lighting.
yeah, street lighting.
I'll give you a comment, you've got
So I don't know
lights
what
at
you
the
think
Prairie
about
Corner,
that, but yep,
I get nothing but positive remarks about it. People
Which
bring it
corner?
up to me. Who put that in? I said, well, that was a
Oh,
state.
okay, yep.
So I don't know if you guys thought about that, but about
Huge,
if we put these in.
lighting, would really help.
Lighting.
We've talked about lighting our county intersections as well where they tee. So that,
Yep.
you know, just something to remind people that something's coming up and, you know, just an additional element to help you slow down. and
We
stop.
call those destination lights, is it? term?
Yeah, so you've seen those in the county where we did a safety project throughout the state where we
Great.
So what destination lights are, they're just the one pole at a rural intersection.
Yard light, basically.
So they don't, we had to get over people like this, the designers, that say, you didn't design that to fully light that intersection. This guy didn't do that, but
My people do.
some people
They
do.
get that
They-
deep in deep, very depth and that stuff.
When we first brought this up, they freaked out and said, well, you can't just do that, you have to design to fully light the intersection. And we said, wait a minute, we're not trying to provide lighting for the road necessarily, we're trying to stick this thing out there that shows you where the intersection is.
Right,
Where
it's
it
a
is,
lighthouse,
yeah.
so it's a road
It's-
lighthouse.
It's a huge help.
Exactly, exactly.
We call them low
So you
cost
just
stations.
think about what the purpose of that was.
Yep.
Now here, if we light these, the turnarounds and the turn lanes and this on here, it does serve the purpose of lighting where you're driving through there. But then we started thinking, it's also changing the environment, right? It's gonna look different out there if we have light poles sticking up throughout that corridor.
Yeah.
So to be honest, that's something that we need to look at too, because then we were like, okay, if we light the intersections, how close are they to each other? What are we doing in between them? Because from a traffic engineering standpoint, another thing we don't want to do is have gaps. So you don't want to have this big thing of light over here. We have I can't remember what, this would have to go back to our
Uniformity.
traffic engineers and our designers
Yeah.
of, we
lighting
have a
uniformity.
distance where we say that if the distance is smaller than X amount, then we're gonna just we're gonna light it continuously. So we have to go back and see how that would lay out.
You mean you'd like the whole corridor instead of just the
Possibly.
turns, possibly
Possibly.
depending on if the turns
Or
are
we
close enough
might-
to one another.
Exactly, or we might go a grouping of them that are close enough, and then maybe there's a gap. I'm not sure how
You
it all
gotta be,
lays out.
yeah, you don't want the light dark, you wanna give time for your eyes to
Yeah.
adjust.
Yeah.
But with the LED lights too, you see they shine differently than the old lights too, they shine more down, so I mean, yeah, that's like Jane said, that's something we just talked about, and we're like, it's a good point, cause you know, like a roundabout we light the whole thing where you got movements and stuff going
Even
on.
in a rural, completely
Yep.
rural, and the reason, one of the reasons is once we put channelizing a curb, once we put something that's meant to channelize people, we want that lit because you wanna see that, right? You don't wanna be in the dark and,
Right.
Yeah,
so the lefts, so you can go left at the intersection, still the left's in, those would have channelizing,
yeah,
Curves.
kinda like the drawing that you passed out shows, but
Right,
we call
you have to
it,
have
we call
some
it
way
pork
to
chop,
curve.
I don't know, that thing in the middle, we call like a pork chop.
Now, how easy is that going to be for somebody to, say it's a really low traffic day and I can see that there's nobody coming either direction? How easy is it for me to go straight across, go into the oncoming, turn a little bit to the right and then turn back left so that I don't have to go way farther down?
we have to design it so it doesn't. We've had that problem before on some other pork chops in cities where we didn't make it
Sharp enough?
sharp enough, where it's a good question, it's a very good point, because that can happen. If you don't design it right, that can happen.
We have it right in front of
Take the
our,
left
But-
lane and then
Yeah,
just
you know, where you basically just drive straight across and angle yourself a little bit and then
Yep.
you go, so
Yep.
we got it right in front of our high school, at Century High School on Century Avenue where they did that. And yeah, because it's not defined enough to push you, so you just kinda just wiggle a little bit and away you go. I mean, people do
We've
it
gotten
all the time.
burned by that, so that is something we are quite aware of.
Yeah.
Is
Now,
that-
I've personally done it myself, so I can't lie.
That just comes down to how you.
One other
design it.
question I have is, the number of cars go down that highway every day is astronomical. Is 6,000 the right figure?
You know, I don't know, I think that sounds about, did you print this up for it?
Yeah,
I think from some of the numbers that I've seen, that seems correct.
I think about that in each direction, yeah.
Each direction?
Right,
Is not total?
right.
Really?
Six 6,000 cars in 24
I thought
hours.
that'd be cool.
Yeah, it always should, it's in the
Are
front.
you looking now on all of them?
Thinking how many times
Cause isn't
it
that,
was
because
You
my.
see that?
going.
Here it
It
is.
goes by lane.
Going.
Divided by,
Bring that, the
Oh,
dropping
it's
off.
the table I was looking at.
so that's 4 cars per minute on each run, and that's for 24 hours a day, and you know that overnight it's not like that, so it's quite a bit more during high
I
traffic.
think that's what it is,
Morning
why?
and
Is that each way or is that?
It's quite a
Oh,
bit.
doesn't it go?
It's not hugely
Yeah,
surprising
so
considering how much traffic
it's
there is from here.
4,000 eastbound, current,
Oh,
Give or take the weather.
and westbound it's
Give or take the weather.
2.5, so
Yeah.
And in the summertime, it's
Yeah.
worse,
6.
because people.
But 6, that's combined though.
Combined?
Combined.
Both directions.
Yep. Sometimes you're right though, sometimes.
It's still a lot.
Like internet, sometimes
A
it
lot,
is.
a lot.
Yeah,
But think, this does not affect the through traffic,
yes.
right? So they're not stopping, they're not changing, they're not,
But which a majority of the traffic
is through, right?
is west or eastbound and not making lefts and rights. But it does happen, obviously, but the majority, like she said, 90-some% of it is
Going through.
keep on going through. And that's something too, we we gotta take into consideration when we do some of these improvements too, is not making too big of a effect. When you talk about that, the concerns with the air seeders, so today, how would they do that? Wouldn't they have to cross the median and be stuck in the road and then turn out?
Try to wait for both.
Right now,
ways
you
to
wait for
clear.
both ways to clear.
Right,
Yes, and-
right.
but the thing that I would say is the operator of the tractor at that point has good visualization, can determine both sides are clear before they come across, whereas if you get out in a J-turn and there isn't enough space, then you're looking behind you to the right if you do have to, clear. And my main concern isn't the tractor operator, it's the guy behind him that's texting and driving 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Because if you got your cart hanging out in that lane, cause it ain't long enough or wide enough, that's my concern, because most of the time, the guy that's on the tractor is pretty cognizant of what's going on.
Yeah.
Because he has to be.
The thing is that, in that case, he only has to judge one direction, doesn't have to judge
Yeah.
both. And probably, he can take a right, go down here and do his U and come back and.
As long as it's designed large enough,
Yeah.
I don't think getting the actual implement through is the
Right.
problem. I'm just concerned about length, width in terms of that back traffic
Right,
coming
right,
when it
and
comes
then-
to somebody running into the back of you.
And then you look at him or her crossing that, your flashers and stuff are set up to flash behind you, and your slow-moving vehicle is behind. So you take a right, you get out on the main line, and then you're getting over to get into that left lane to make your U-turn, which we can design wide enough to accommodate that. Traffic coming onto you from behind is seeing all the flashers from that equipment and seeing slow-moving vehicle. You don't see that from the side.
Yeah.
Across. So I mean, there's
Yeah,
things with it,
so I
Some of
think,
these are crowding 100 feet.
Oh, I know, I farm too, but
Heat fuckers.
down the flashers, so we
Yeah.
got their cedars and
yeah, and that's just my main concern off of looking at the, like you said, the pictures don't really necessarily possibly do it justice, because what kind of length are we talking, what kind of width are we talking? Your normal lane width is, on a county road is what, 12? I mean, and everything's 14 to 16, 18
And I
feet wide
say,
now,
When we go to design this, we're gonna be conservative on it, and we're gonna design something that'll work. When we did some of our first roundabouts, we wanted to make sure they worked, because the last thing you wanna do is you put something out there, and then the public doesn't like it or it doesn't work quite right, and then you're gonna say, don't ever put a roundabout in, the roundabout's garbage. Well, that's not true, what we're doing now is we designed them pretty big to accommodate the vehicles, and now we're starting to bring them in a little bit as we get more comfortable with them and as we understand we don't need to have this huge radius or huge circumference out there for these trucks to drive. We're starting to be a little more creative with some of this stuff, but when we put it out there, that's with this too, we'd be real cognizant of what we're doing and how we're designing it to allow the movements and the concerns that you're talking about.
So, and I probably find time for me to jump in and say sorry for being late, everybody.
We've all done that.
And the only major concern that I haven't heard addressed, and maybe your guys' numbers will tell me that I'm incorrect, it really feels like there's a lot of access points really close together, out especially in the Ackerman Acres area. Is there any way that you know, we could combine this with sort of a frontage road idea to reduce the number of accesses? Because that, to me, in my view, is the largest concern that I have, is that there are too many vehicles that can come from too many places. You know, and so I was just curious to get you guys' thoughts on that. I know the state doesn't necessarily like the idea of frontage roads, but.
I'll chime in on that, but the first one is just east of town here in the
Yes.
north, on the westbound lane. There's 6 within a mile.
Yep, and obviously, the more access
You're gonna
points you
finish
have, the
I'll let it
more
run
as a
through.
driver, you gotta be cognizant of what can happen at that access point and access management. But as part of these RCIs, the medians crossings would be closed, the majority of them would be closed because they need to be force you into the RCI movement. Now, the frontage road now, like you have a frontage road that runs all the way, I think from the implement dealership all the way into town on that north side there.
No, it don't get to town.
It gets pretty close, okay. Sorry, but it's close, and that's a low speed road. Now, if you were out there in Ackerman Acres and you wanted to get to Devil's Lake, would you drive on a 25-mile-an-hour frontage road for 6 miles? Or would you jump on, we're in Bismarck, if I wanna get to South Bismarck, you know how I get there? I jump on interstate. I jump on interstate and I drive like an extra 10 miles on my way to get to South Bismarck, it's quicker than to go straight down Washington Street to get there. And with the frontage roads, the frontage roads are generally good when you have a lot of businesses along there that feed that, or people that are going back and forth. Now, if you look out there, yeah, the point of the frontage road is that you don't put an access point in every eighth of a mile or something like that. You should be able to space them out more if you have the frontage road, because that can phase. And for whatever reason, we got what we got out there today, right? And everybody knows to change axis, it's a big deal.
Okay, then I've got a follow-up. Is there a stretch of road where we could add a third lane? You know, that bumps out on the right side of the road, so that as people enter, they could turn onto the highway and speed up, and then merge in.
You're talking like an acceleration lane of some sort. There's guidelines for when you install those. And generally, we don't have the traffic or the numbers to meet those very often, is that right?
Well, I think too that in some cases, they work, and in other cases, people don't use them. Where we've put them in some cases, acceleration lanes, and we found that people just don't.
Skip them.
They skip them. So I don't, there's places where they work and there's places where they don't.
But it's another lane that you as a driver have to recognize is there. You got more pavement, you got more lanes, you got more going on, more. I don't think, there's gaps. I think all on this road when you drive, there's gaps. With that amount of traffic, there's gaps for people to turn into. So obviously, if you're driving a tractor with an air seeder, I mean, you're not gonna be going 7 miles an hour, you know, so I mean. But again.
I wanna go back to the
Yep,
frontage
go
road
for it.
conversation though. I love that you bring it up because you hit on it. There is a safety benefit from reducing access points, period. That you're totally spot on there. But I think, and I'd be curious to where you're thinking because I'm having a hard time on this corridor too, thinking where it makes sense because where it makes sense is where you have a bunch of accesses that then use that frontage road and consolidate and come out at one point, and I can't think off the top of my head where that makes sense where it isn't already at. So you have the frontage road, and I think the frontage road has too many access points as it exists today, right? It's like, there's an access and then you just drive a little bit, there's another one, and it's like,
Well,
why do we have the frontage road there?
What I'm thinking about has no access points on either end.
Well, you
They don't
have,
go anywhere.
Yeah, you know,
yeah,
They don't go nowhere.
well, I do think
You
should.
gotta get on a highway to go somewhere. So I don't even,
I think functionally the problem isn't the fact that we would add frontage roads, it's that, like you said, it's been piecemealed for so long that the existing access points and development don't match up side to side. So then you got
Yes.
one side of the road coming on
Yep.
here and then
Yes.
700 yards down the road, the other one's coming on, when they should have been lined up immediately, and then we wouldn't have this problem,
Right,
because
and that's
then
where,
that's where
where
the
the frontage
so
rate
is it,
would help.
would there be an option to maybe put those, coincide them somehow, if there's ways we could do
Yeah.
something
Yeah,
like that?
yes,
to
and that's, I
increase
say,
access?
every project we do, we try to
Do
do
you
that. 'cause-
moonlight as a traffic engineer?
Yeah,
No,
drive,
but I read about it.
but we,
They were the Holiday Inn Express last night.
but we try to, you know, whenever we do any project, we look at access points and frontage roads or whatever. But eliminating access points is a team and a group effort. We as a department cannot do, we need the support of the city, we need support of the county to do some of this, because it's a big thing when you change some of this with people. But that's something we always look at and we try to do, because we have like, our districts are going out, and if there's field approaches that go nowhere, they're taking them out, or they're talking with the landowners, take them out. Just the less we can have them, so the less that you can have that as a decision point with an access, that something could happen, someone could pull in there, and then if they pull in there, then they gotta back out, or they gotta drive out, so. We agree, our first thing is we always say backage road. Number one is backage road. If you can do a backage road somewhere, and then if that doesn't work, let's try a frontage road. You know, rather than filtering everybody onto the main line, let's filter them all at strategic points. But the backage road is the first thing that we support, like when you do developments and stuff with developers, try to get that backage road, so then you mean, because sometimes you run in with the frontage roads, and the frontage roads get close. We ran it in here in Devil's Lake, gets close to the main line, and then you're like, well, how can this truck do this turn, and then they're kittywampus, and they don't have enough. So you need that separation, and then that gets like, out here, we had to buy, I think, 1 or 2 businesses out to get the bulb area, so you had enough room for a truck to turn, that they wouldn't be blocking everything. But we countered, yeah, with that, first thing I would say is backage roads first if possible. But then that, a lot of times the backage road is the city and the county's gotta be very supportive and push developers, and I mean, there's money to put that in too.
Does that township do their zoning?
Yes.
Yeah, well, there.
That's what I
Well,
was
There's
thinking.
there's your primary
That's
problem.
where- and-
But
Townships do.
But the only thing that I add to all of this is I guess when I think about this, I understand what you are all saying about the numbers not being there and the potential push, but if Devil's Lake's going to grow in the future, that's the direction it's going to grow, right? All of the growth that has happened, well, most of the growth that's happened to the Devil's Lake immediate metropolitan area has been on the Highway 2 corridor to the east of town. And so what sort of concerns me is, what if you get 200 more homes out there in the next 10 years, right? You know, and then you get more businesses out there, and you sort of get that snowballing effect. Again, this is where I think that we need to sort of comprehensively plan out the accesses in a way that has not been done before, and that's sort of what I'm coming back to is how can we get it so that there aren't so many places that any Joe Schmo can get onto the highway at any time.
And
right?
we'd love to work with you guys on that.
And
We'd
it's-
be all for that. You're talking our language.
Well, that's not really our language, because you get into the
Right.
planning, the zoning.
Department's
That-
language,
that's-
yeah,
But that's another part of
yes.
what we do, but not really, because we end up working with cities and counties and, you know, the LPA, the local public agency part of it, because you guys have the responsibility for that, right? Or townships, or it's
Right, I mean,
the
the
local.
challenge is when they're, you know, they create their own zoning, which is no zoning. and-
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
but, I mean, we dealt with this, oil boom in the
Or
last.
boom, big time.
I mean, this came up like never, like for us honestly, I think that we've never seen before is the impact of local zoning on the highway system.
Yes.
It can help it or it can hurt it, and it's something that really should be done together, right?
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, that's,
Ultimately,
Amazing what you're
if
saying.
somebody would ask for an access onto US 2, Wyatt does have the authority to say no. That is granted to us, but you gotta look at multiple different reasons why. You used to do that a lot in church too, but that's a tough thing. You don't try to work with them and they say, hey, we're gonna put a house out there, okay, build a frontage road. You know, what it's gonna build for, but that's something, the access is, it's always an ongoing thing. is always a concern, because a lot of times we get to like a project, damage is done, now what? So you gotta try to clean it up, you gotta try to, do that, and, we're going through it with, US 85, or 4-lane US 85 between Wofford City and along Next Bridge. And there, we're trying to limit access points and stuff like that, but,
So
that
you
becomes
think
a land
there's
grant thing.
changes out there right now that could be made in conjunction with
Yeah.
zoning? And, I mean, is that you don't see that we have on here?
Are they aware of the hospital possibly going in out there?
Well, it's not going out that far, but it's
Right.
potentially.
But as far as access points, like,
Right on Elm
if-
Drive there, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, if the hospital went in across from the travel plaza, they would just extend the frontage road all the way back to Elks Drive, I would think, and tie it back into the, where the cut lane is going into the travel plaza.
Exact same things happen in Rugby, Wyatt, right? Rugby's putting a clinic or a hospital in there, so we're helping with a project to extend the frontage road.
Where's it going?
North of Leading Edge there.
East
Across
side,
the east side of town, huh?
Yep, on the north. They bought a lot there and they're putting in a hospital, so we're adding like a quarter-mile maybe of frontage road or something like that.
They bought the land, Altru did out here by,
I think they have an option, I don't know if they bought it,
we got an option just east of the travel plaza, east side of Elm Drive.
Yeah, and it's, the city sent
They don't
the
actually-
letter and asked for help.
You
Do
probably,
they actually own any property up to that frontage road, or would they have to access from Elks?
I would assume that.
They bought
they-
the northern, well, if you're talking, who knows? Here's the
That honestly is the answer, but nobody knows
But
yet.
the land that Ultra has the right to purchase is there's 100 acres, as you're leaving east of town, there's Senex east, and then there's the Elks Drive. They bought the north end of 100 acres, so they bought 50 acres. But it is not what's up against the highway.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
further up on that.
So they're gonna have to tie it back to Elks Drive then, basically, for access point then.
dogfight.
But, I mean, the main thing that I'm looking at is, where you've got things like Tiny Hill Avenue and 46th Street. Where it's just like you've got these goofy access points.
Yeah.
That are it's unnecessary to have both of them, because there is no one that is served by one that is not served by the other. Right, like on the north end of Ackerman Acres where you have that Tiny Hill Avenue that runs straight in and you got 46th. It's things like that that you're seeing on the corridor that it's, how can we,
And I think you probably haven't seen the detail of it, but our traffic ops is a little more thorough, but we are looking at access consolidation and access control.
But something that maybe
Yeah.
we did not have in there
Right.
because. Okay, so we're talking about the potential RCI. Once we get into that part of it, that
That's
is
where the resistance really gets
going
up
to be
high,
a very, but
Really?
taking away access.
If you tell people they can't drive onto the road where they're used to driving on the road,
Yeah,
they're really
that
gonna,
is-
they're really gonna know.
It's very political. You think that people are calling you now over this,
You guys know
wait till
both.
they say, hey, you wanna take my
I'm saying
access
don't do
away.
it. But if we go down that path,
We're on the.
we're in a whole other.
I know you guys make hard decisions about every meeting you have, and every once in a while you got a little easier one, but you got decisions to make and not everybody's always happy. And some of this, but you were put in as the elected member, and you make that hard decision of taking everything into account. And we're early in this stage yet, I mean, we've had the public meeting, we've had engaged some people with it all, but I mean, we're still going through, and we wanna keep tweaking this and working with you guys on it, and we would hope you'd be a member, a team member with us on this. Partner very much, so we
That's why we
welcome
wanted to
that.
get involved early, so
Yeah.
we could get our voice out there and voice the concerns we.
Right.
I have two questions, I guess. How many RCIs are we looking at putting in?
Is an RTI considered a single or a pair?
Well, one is a pair.
Because it
so
was
it's
kind of tough to,
10.
delineate the number with the big gap on the wall on High Plains, because it
I
was
thought it was 7.
tough to read it, I'll be honest.
One,
We got one of these, you know.
out for you.
Oh, this one's-
Five,
Well, we've got
six
the
and a
map from
half.
the 18.
Yeah, because we got an extra one here for
There's
the one.
another extra because it,
Okay, so this is an actual one, and this will be just like a, controls just a left-hand one then.
6.5.
Yep, and each of them
For
can
somebody
service
somebody that
access.
goes, so that's why I say most of them come in pairs, but in some of these, if you don't have any access coming this way, you really don't need them.
Okay.
But,
You know, one thing that helps, like you talked about, the access points that exist today, with some of these, well, with all of them, the lefts off are removed with the RCI. So the access point becomes a right in, right out. So that does improve the access management and the safety of keeping an existing access, if that makes sense, right? We're making it kind of in half, so.
So some of the existing access points are gonna continue to just be crossovers, they're not gonna be RCIs.
They would be right in, right out.
Right, it's right out.
The
So
part
like
in the
for
middle will
instance,
be removed.
what we call the median, the connection between the eastbound and westbound roadway will be removed,
So we're half doing what you're saying.
other than that where there's
oh,
an RCI.
okay, I get what you're saying, so like for instance, I believe on this map, it's Brent Avenue, which would be the main center entrance into Ackerman Acres on the north side of the road there. So that would be closed off at the median, you would have to turn right then to turn left and go all the way down to that 46th Street RCI then to get back.
If you wanted to go to Grand Forks, or you would, right,
It would be closed off in the median to come out and take a left, but you'd still be able to take a left to come in.
come in.
Yes,
That's where that
So when
little,
you're coming from Devil's Lake, you'd be to take a left right in there, but if you wanted to go to Grand Forks, you'd have to go
you'd have
a
to
little
go right
bit
to
west
the left.
first.
yeah,
So you're gonna essentially control, all the medians now are gonna be shut down, you're gonna have to go to an RCI then to be able to turn back, dependent upon
Yes,
where you're at.
Predominantly not just to the east of the rest area, I think is what
Yeah,
it was,
yeah.
somewhere around.
So it is consolidating access
Yeah.
points in a different way than
Yep,
totally removing them.
So it's still allowing the access points, it's just making it so that you have to take a safer.
it's making them
Yes.
safer, yes, make them take a safer route rather than, you look at the crashes that you've had, the RCIs instead of the side crashes of the T-bones, it's a right turn, or they take a right and they avoid that T-bone potential crash if they're coming out taking a left.
Well, and that was gonna be my follow-up question after asking how many RCIs there is, we have this crash data over the past, I don't know how many years this is. It doesn't really give us a time frame, but 3 fatalities and 73 total crashes, 26 of them had injuries. Do we have any, I would assume that information is from the DOT through HP or whatever. Do we have any delineation on where those accidents occurred? So we could determine maybe if trying RCIs in those areas where we know we have consistent accidents, and maybe in the other ones we don't try the RCIs, or just a combination of both, just out of curiosity's sake, because I know we're gonna get continued questions from the community on,
Can we pull this up on the big screen by any chance?
Yes, you wanna look at this one, Jim?
Well,
That's okay, I look at it.
Oh, this one?
I mean, we got
I do.
the capabilities, I mean,
I got my computer if I can, that's why, know where that is.
We have to hide
I don't know
it.
where that one
I
is.
know where it is, but it's on the hard drive.
That one? Oh, and can you get at it?
Need internet VPN, I can pull it up.
That's my only, one of my main
Right,
questions.
right, it
Just
is.
because we know, like, for instance, when we pushed originally, we
Well,
got left-hand turn lanes in at Vining, for instance.
Yeah.
We know that's a bad turn, because you're coming around the curve, you can't see, to me, that's a prime location, we wanna see something like that. But maybe there's, instead of putting in 7 or 6.5, you put in just, I'm just spitballing, because I know we're gonna hear, at some point when people hear what we've talked about here, they're gonna say, it sounds like you're going ahead. That's not what we're doing, we're trying to get a feel, go back and forth, talk about what our options are gonna be. So I'm just trying to figure out, where are our crashes happening? Cause if we have an intersection where we've never had a crash, does it necessarily make sense to put in additional?
There's still the potential
I know
out there
there's-
because of
I don't disagree.
actions and,
Well, and it makes it all feel more consistent, right? I
the
mean, that's-
corridor consistency we like to.
I don't
Right,
disagree, they're right.
And I can see how that could get really confusing if if one road is a straight through and the next one's a turn, and then you're gonna have people trying to jump the pork chops, right?
Well, then you're gonna have the 70-55 issue where people are not gonna know it's, it's the same concept.
Right.
Continuity makes a lot of sense down a
I
corridor.
think, as much as the safety is a really good piece of this, one of the things that I think about, and it's sort of this, it's hard to describe because it's really qualitative, right? Which is, how does it feel, you know, to be out there, to have that access? Because I really think that that has a lot to do with future development, right? And where people will choose to develop or not to develop. And that's my primary concern, is I don't wanna make this, you know, like a nuclear fallout zone in terms of what people wanna build out there in the future. And I don't think that you're going necessarily that way, but I'm just saying that I wanna give you that perspective. That's one of my concerns, is how do we make sure that this corridor remains a really premier and desirable place to develop, if you're looking to develop, you know, any kind of commercial or residential or even industrial.
It's gonna be a tough sell, it really is. I don't know.
Well, and then when you have all the RV traffic, the lake access traffic coming into Haybell Heights, and there's potential for additional campgrounds to the south of there, and then you're looking at the manufacturing and Dakota Drive being, you know, the bigger equipment heading on the north side of the road there. You know, there's some issues in that area. You know, when you have, you know, between a Thursday, Friday afternoon, you know, people with boats and campers coming into Haybell Heights, you know, you could have 200 to 300 people a day that are turning into that.
That whole run in the summertime becomes.
Sunday afternoon?
It's crazy. With
You don't even wanna be on
boats
Highway
getting out towards
208.
Rutten, trying to get south, crossing the highway across the rest
Yeah.
area, it's crazy. It's nuts out there in the summertime.
So when they're pulling a boat, they're overhanging if they're caught in the median now, right?
They always are.
You always-
So
Every
this
single time, it's.
this concept eliminates that overhanging, so I mean, it improves safety, which
Yeah,
is
I
the main
think,
goal.
yeah, I think all of us can see that,
Yeah.
we see the advantages of it, it's just a matter of, you know, you have to sell it to the community. I mean, and show them that this is gonna be a change and it's gonna be painful maybe, but there's some positives to it, some definite positives. Especially, like I said, I came in today with my main concerns being with length for the large, you know, because we get a lot of truck traffic out there, a lot of implement traffic. I wanna make sure that we protect that so that people have the ability to get through those turns in a safe manner and, you know, we don't cause additional problems because of that.
Like I said, you don't go on that highway on a Sunday afternoon in June, July, or August with a piece of equipment. I don't care if you're driving a tractor, you don't go out there.
No.
Not going east. Because there is an enormous amount of traffic going down that road from about 2 to dark, even past dark. You know, just unbelievable.
Yeah, you move stuff early in the morning or really,
Mm-hmm.
not late at night, really early in the morning.
This here intersection, you have something similar in a January timeframe with 40 inches of snow?
That's where this guy comes from.
Be a good place to push snow.
It seems like a good place to pile it. You know, and that's how it has been emphasized as a concern is, you know, obviously priority one, when we get a heavy snowfall, is opening the roads. Secondary would be the turn lanes. How much extra time is gonna be required to do these RCIs, is that what they're called? Intersections. You know, is it gonna accumulate blowing snow, drift better through there and pile it deeper and create hazards, especially for a truck pulling a trailer and you know, because the last thing you want is all of a sudden you get that truck trailer stuck in that particular area. And then you have a concern for both directions of traffic.
I guess how do you clean them out, push them, blow them?
We'll end up pushing them. We'll have to attack those just like the main line, you know, we won't be able to come back and hit them like we do a lot of the smaller medians, you know, we're
Hit
gonna-
them at the same time, basically.
you know, with the big trucks, you really can't even hardly get into the medians the way they are right now.
Right.
Those trucks are just too big, where these are, there's a turn lane, they're designed for semis to go through. So our plow trucks can maneuver through these better than they can the existing ones, so that these can get cleaned out probably easier with mainline than the other ones, rather than come back, and you're always gonna have, you know, on heavy snow years, you're gonna have some ridging. So you're gonna have to come back and do some cleanup, but the big plows can plow these actually, because there's room, probably better than the narrow medians that are out there right now,
Or
because they
is,
just can't.
Wyatt,
can't maneuver.
or connected?
We haven't talked about stoplights, more stoplights. You know that's gonna slow down traffic. Is there any key places you're thinking about stoplights?
Is that governed by like, mountain traffic? The stoplight?
We're talking traffic signals?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, traffic signals are based on warrants that are based on traffic volumes largely. So, yes, these, we are not at the volumes that would be traffic signal warrants here. And those are regulated by the federal government, and we cannot put them on a federal aid route with federal aid money unless they meet a warrant. And if we would do that, we jeopardize federal aid funding. I mean, that's how critical from a federal standpoint traffic signals are.
So,
Traffic signals too, I want to point out, they can improve safety in high volume areas where they're needed. Obviously, we all know there's areas where traffic signals are needed. Traffic signals themselves are not a safety device though. I mean, put in a place where they are not needed, they are actually not contributing to safety.
so
Distraction.
just out of curiosity, you know, when you say we don't meet the volumes, and I understand you don't have the numbers in front of you, are you talking we'd need to have 2 times, 3 times, 10 times the amount of traffic? I mean, roughly? Just, because the only reason that I bring it up
Well,
is this something that could change 5 years from now, you know, if traffic continued to pick up, or is it something that we're never gonna hit that point, is my question.
It's the volumes at each individual intersection, just so to speak in general, that's different for every single location depending on your side street volume.
So it's off the side streets, it's off of each turning action, things of that nature?
It's mainline and side street volumes,
I
yeah.
mean, I guess the
And
only,
turning do come into play, but it's.
the only place I could see at some point eventually you might have to put one in is if the hospital ever does go out there, and, you know, Elks Drive might be someplace that would be something that would be looked at, but that's
Yeah.
well hypothetical, if a building, you know, if the hospital goes down.
Yeah. And nothing we would do here would prevent, you can signalize an RCI also. You can also take these out if that's where it would go to, and you go to a fully signalized intersection with, I mean, these really are
That's kind of
only
like what I was
putting
getting
in
at.
a U-turn and they can be removed, right? They're not that hard to
Would
change.
a flashing yellow at Hefty rest area indicating a traffic change?
There is one.
Well, it's up further on the east side or the west side, on the north side of the highway going west. And then there's one coming out of town, just a small yellow sign with a flashing light, saying merging traffic or something like that. But if you had a flashing light indicating there's some sort of change in traffic speed, if it would be, and reduce that speed starting at Hefty, all the way into town. You could start at, say, if you went from a 70 to a 60 to a 40, or a 50 to a 40 through town, would that be something that would, and I don't know, you know, I think a lot of the crashes that are happening are distracted drivers driving too fast. How do we change that? You know, I think if we came up with that answer, we'd be.
Try driving a semi through town at about 4 in the afternoon when you're going over to the terminal, it'll scare the living hell out of you, how many people are not paying attention. They're looking down on their phones while they drive.
Well,
You're sitting up above them, you'll see.
God, it's bad.
yeah,
You're just like, I can't stop like you can stop in this thing.
well, and you can't speed up. You know, if I pull out onto the highway and I look in my rearview mirror and there's somebody climbing up my tailpipe, I can stomp on it in my vehicle and get going to speed. And a semi or a tractor, you don't have that option.
When I'm 80 or 90,000 pounds, it takes a lot.
Right, yeah. And if that individual isn't paying attention, they'll end up like, this picture here of that pickup in the back end of that disc. That was a bad one,
Bad deal.
yeah, and that was somebody that just wasn't paying attention. But Steve, if you had that website up there,
Now we've got two different
Yep.
cameras, or two different splits.
but there's a video on that website you guys have.
Yep.
That shows traffic going through an RCI at a kind of a time-lapsed, high speed kind of thing, so you get a good idea of bigger trailers going through there, and as well as smaller cars and cars or vehicles pulling boats and campers and different things like that.
So remind us on the timeline for everything going forward?
So if you arrow down here, Steve,
Let me see here.
down the,
Let me look.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, I
Let me look.
mistyped.
I see you're using our website. It looks like we would plan for construction in 24.
24,
So
okay, that's
final
what I
design
remember from that.
sometime, final design would be worked out sometime late this year, or next year, to have it ready for probably like a fall bid opening in 20. So 24 construction, depending on dollars, funding,
Yep, there you
everything
go.
that goes on with it.
Now go down to the video. And if you go to like the 340 mark in that video and hit play, I mean, it's a good, yeah, they're about there, yeah, little,
Oh yeah,
little
that's
past.
a good video.
Yeah, if you
That's the Walmart
make
guy,
this
that's a
bigger.
good video.
Yeah, this is a good video. He talks a lot about it as far as a semi-truck driver, going through there.
The traffic is so much simpler and safer, and there's no comparison.
But here's the video that I was talking about, and it shows how trucks and pickups pulling
Campers
campers
that
and,
you have around
and
here, yeah.
everything, school buses, and, you know, it looks scary as hell at this speed, but.
It happens every day out there.
Yep,
But see, they don't have the bulb out on that other side either, you notice.
right,
They might have a little wider median than we have, and that's where we gotta look at it. Obviously, if you have a wider
See,
median.
they've got a wide shoulder, and they're using that shoulder though on that
Yep,
outside.
they have a
Yeah,
wide
trucks
shoulder.
are getting in that shoulder, but yeah.
so, that's a good video on that,
Yeah,
on
that's a
that
real good
website, lot better on the big screen than my 3-inch
Yep,
phone.
that's a good one, that's,
Like in that video in comparison, is there gonna be more, I suppose it depends on where it's designed at, but is there going to be more lane length from the right-hand turn to the RCI, because, you know, jumping across traffic sometimes can be
Yeah,
a little
I think when
difficult.
you look at that, and that's similar to the sheet that you have, and the reference points are on that sheet, so you can see the distance kind of between where that's at. You know, and there's main intersections that are kind of centered on each of these RCIs, plus there's other smaller ones that are right in or right out too, that will also use these RCIs, but they're kind of centered for those main intersections, so.
And then we talked about, Chairman, I don't think you were here, we talked about lighting too.
You had mentioned that, I was
Were you
here,
here?
yeah, where you're
Okay.
talking about potentially lighting most of the corridor.
Because I was just thinking about that when you were talking about the feel of the corridor, the appealing, the
Right.
the context of it, I think that would add to it.
Now, I guess the way that I see this, and maybe this is wrong from a traffic engineering perspective, but all that these J-turns are is essentially you're taking a roundabout and making it a mile long. Right. I mean, that's really all that it is.
Good
It's a
catch.
roundabout that's a mile long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been called the new lips about.
So if you like, look at this picture, see, that's sometimes where you need the bigger area for vehicles to turn, then you build that.
They also call it a loon. So
A
if you
loon.
ever hear somebody say that, especially in Minnesota,
Minnesota.
it's kind of funny.
So that's like something that we potentially could end up with depending on the design vehicles and what we need. Now, that video that we just seen, obviously, they didn't have that loon, they had just probably a 12-foot shoulder or a bit of a bigger shoulder. But that's when we run our design vehicles on it, you know, the WB67 with the 50-foot trailer, and we run it on it to see how it works. But ultimately, when you're sitting there making that turn, that driver is squared up to the intersection, and you can look completely right, and you'll know whether you have that gap or not, and you know whether to go. Where you don't have to make a double decision, and that's what in this video, that truck driver, the Walmart truck driver, that are calling me talking about. This is something that we would potentially be putting in along here. I mean, we haven't quite got to that stage yet on the design, but that'd be something definitely we'd be looking.
Especially at
That
the one.
wide, you're making that wide.
We'd have to take a look at it, especially like if you said that where the implement dealer, where you know there's some, you know, bigger vehicles or where that other gas station or truck stop, you know, we'd run those big vehicles through to make sure that they can make it, safely make that U-turn, if you will.
And I think,
Rather
I don't know if, you know, in visiting with people, especially in the implement dealer area, that was one of their main chief concerns was, are we gonna have enough room to get around that turn? I don't think they're against the concept of making it a safer turn, it's just that they wanna make sure they're gonna be able to get a rig with a loaded combine or a loaded tractor
Yeah.
back on that step deck to be able to make that turn safely.
So that next left turn should be 20 to 24 feet of actual width that they could so to get out of both through lanes when they're making that maneuver. You know, combine with the header, obviously, were not designed for anything
No,
like that,
but everybody
you're-
should be taking their headers off when they're coming down the road, right?
But yeah, so a combine trailer, air seeder, those types of things, 20-ish feet wide, we can design for that and get them out of the through lanes.
I'll give you this much credit though, you did a very good job of presenting it to us today. I wish it would have been this good out at High Plains on that evening meeting. You guys have done very, very good.
I mean, we need to, I mean, go High Plains, assuming that's the implement dealership.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's something that we would work with them on that type of stuff, and if we need to meet with them on it, you know, that type of thing. I mean, we're obviously, I know they're concerned, the same thing with roundabout, they have to, we can't drive it, we can't get around it, you can't get trucks around it, you can't get, so we actually had we put a roundabout in over by Bila, and the trucks were so comfortable, he was going so darn fast, he tipped over. So he was extremely comfortable with the roundabout, it was calm ground.
Whipping through it
Well,
at high speeds.
I think part of it is, at least in my opinion, is when it's the first time you're gonna try something. You don't have a place you can point somebody to and say,
Yes.
Go try it.
go check that one
I
out,
agree.
go try it, go see how it works for you. And it concerns people, and it rightfully so, when you've never, you know, when it's something new and it's never been used.
The other place we're working on this right now is just west of Williston.
Yep.
And actually, there's a public meeting coming up the first part of March.
Yep.
And that's another place where we're
It's
proposing, US two,
Same
proposing the exact same thing, a corridor. It's a corridor where there's accesses and and we're doing the same type, it's a corridor, I don't know if it's as long, I can't remember, but very similar to what we got going on here. We you know, not a roundabout doesn't work everywhere, a signal doesn't work everywhere, an RCI doesn't work everywhere. There is engineering behind this, and that we look into and then consider the locations. Now, like you can see up in this picture where they have that median there, so people can still take a left in. So like, for example, Ackerman Acres, they would still be able to take a left in and go there. When they're coming from Devil's Lake, they take a left and go right into their development, no issue. It's when they wanted to go to Grand Forks, they'd have to take a right and then take that left and then circle around and go. We just might be a little further apart than what shows here because
Because of all the access.
we're trying to
we're
capture
accommodate.
multiple accesses and not just capture one. This is particularly probably
Am I
intersection
seeing
access.
this right? This is raised?
Yes.
That's okay. So
Yeah,
that's
and that's where we-
answering my question from
Yeah.
before.
Raised, and that's where we talk about the lighting, is we feel we should, if we got raised
Yes.
medians out there and stuff, we should write them. Same thing with roundabouts, we have curb.
That looks really squished to me.
Yep.
I-
Yep.
It looks really short between the intersection and
Cause it tapers over right away, you know?
Yeah, and that's where I'm
Yeah.
saying, cause if you're gonna take a right, you're gonna have to skip across traffic, so you're gonna, I mean,
Yeah.
it's still gonna
I
be
don't-
safer because you're only contending with traffic coming from one way to know if you're gonna have to change lanes immediately, but it's
That-
really a tight run.
I wonder if that's really a lower speed or the angle of that picture.
Or it could be an earlier one they put in, and that's with most things, as you do them more often and there's literature, you learn. You learn from them, and there's all kinds of these have been put in now, so.
Well, as this process goes on, let me flip the script a little bit. How can we help you?
I got an idea, I just thought of it.
He's gonna help you right now.
I told you people how well you've done today. Would you make one more trip to Devil's Lake and have the same meeting we had out at High Plains in their facility and give all the information that you gave us today? And explain these U-turns or the J-turns and everything.
Who would you like as the audience? Oh, no, like,
No, he said High Plains, so you're.
so just, me talk to the,
There's a meeting room out there, they
Okay.
have the public come and you
Okay.
guys go ahead and,
Because I have had several comments from people saying, oh, you know, I wanted to get to that meeting so I'd understand it, you know, basically, and they didn't, and that's on them. But I do think it would be useful to have another public
like
meeting,
I said earlier.
but you guys have really done a lot to allay
Absolutely.
sort of some of the concerns that I had before this meeting, so I,
And we could help advertise it too, but it wasn't real well advertised.
No.
What was different about what we talked about then, I apologize, I wasn't there, so I don't know, what wasn't,
I'm wondering if it wasn't just the presenters.
Yes, yeah, dude.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, I
I didn't wanna say that.
I
Well,
want
they
you to be
basically
honest.
said, thanks for being here, here's what we're doing, look at the board.
yeah,
Okay, okay.
that was pretty
That
much
was
exactly
pretty much,
it.
so
Well-
instead of answering like, okay, we asked a question here, and then you said, okay, this is how we're looking at designing it, it's not completely designed, we're looking at, you know.
and I would say kind of the first thing I started with you, hey, can we talk to you informally about this?
That's a
And I
big
would
part of
say
it,
that
is to
that
make it
public
informal.
meeting is more formalized.
Yes.
It's kind of like you guys have your meetings, they're formalized, and I would guess it's probably more, but we're like still in the early stages, and yeah, we don't have every nook and cranny figured out on this thing, and honestly, we want the input from you, the implement dealership, the public, the people that drive it. I know there's a lot of people that commute and drive that road, and they'd like to see improvements, and, you know, I think that's something probably.
Not
we need us to-
100% sold yet, but I feel better than
I do.
I did coming into it.
Well, the thing is, we're not gonna make every last person
Well, right,
happy with it either, but at the same time, it's, at least you could say you had input.
yeah.
Even if you don't at the end agree with everything that was done.
You know, being unfamiliar with them is the great unknown, and, you know, looking at them on video, you know, that, you know, obviously you can point out some concerns that you would have with something like that, but you feel a little better about it. You know, and I guess almost having to drive it a few times to see it, to feel it, but I think, and I'll reiterate this, that I said in the beginning of the meeting, safety is obviously the utmost concern, and how we can make that stretch of highway the safest possible without making it more confusing and more dangerous. So,
did you, I don't know if the county commission is aware, but DOT does have highway safety improvement program, where we accept applications at the end of December usually, right? I think it's usually where the county has areas that they want to do safety improvements on, like destination lights. I know there were plans laid out to do that, and I don't know, we'd have to look to see what Ramsey had laid out, but there's 90% funding available for projects that as a county you can put in an application for.
And you should have a local road, you do have a local road safety
Yep.
plan for the county. So
Yep.
that's what he's talking about. There's some low-cost items in that plan that basically you can take, just let me know. If you want more information, we can talk with our traffic ops engineer, because he runs the program. But you literally can take the pieces out. There's already project submissions in your plan. And if you like some of those, and you wanna do them, you take them out, you submit them to us. We pay the 90%, you have to come to the table with the 10%, but you can, those are actually already pretty much vetted. You can just say, we wanna do these, and we'll say, okay. And we'll give it-
Certain parts of the plan are already basically pre-approved.
Yep,
Yep.
but then if there's anything else, we do have a submission where you just submit it to us, and we can also help with some of the analysis of it if you want more help in saying, what should we do here? If you have a location that's, you can work through Wyatt too on those conversations, but yeah, we have a federal program where
They
there's
don't have a
dollars.
website, Gene?
Yeah, you can, on our website,
Where do I
your,
go?
your local road safety plan is on our website. I think under visions, yeah, you gotta dig in there a little bit, but.
Ours is pretty much done except for some signing.
Is yours done? Okay, great.
We've got it cleverly hidden on our website.
Yeah.
But if-
I-
but
We've done most
There's
of
so
that.
much stuff out there, everything.
But if there's other, things that you
In
come up
addition
with.
to that, you can always.
Yeah, we'll take some lights.
Yeah, we do have some lighting ones left in our.
The destination lights, yep, and those are about,
Or if you have other locations that you think are
yep,
relevant, if you've made it through, your plan was prioritized, but if you've made it through your plan and you wanna start working on other locations too, that's absolutely works for us.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here, and making the trip up. It was really helpful. And like I said, if there is some way, I don't know if there was anything, but if there is some way that we can help you as you are going through this process, don't hesitate to reach out, because I think the closer we work together, the better this will come out, and we'd appreciate the chance to talk with you all.
One thing I'd say, if we are able to get something together where we meet again with the public, us to be in some type of a partnership, and maybe it's, because when you get into that atmosphere, people seem to be shy of asking questions.
Right.
And keep it's so formal. If we can figure out a way to keep it light, loose, and you guys ask questions, we have a conversation like this and they join in, that would work great.
Glad to help you.
You know, so we'd have to try to figure out some way to partner and how we wanna, move forward with that.
I think it would really help, I really do. I think we'd satisfy a lot of questions in the community. I really do.
Okay, well, we gotta do a commission meeting, so.
yeah, we'll get out of your hair.
Thank you.
Very much.
Appreciate your support. Thank you, appreciate your.
Appreciate it, yeah. Thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Either one.
Thank you.
I'm used to it.
Most
of the time I walk around like
I'm not, I don't have any
We're okay.
engineering background.
If you don't, I think you're one of those closet guys.
Yeah.
I'm a farmer slash athletic trainer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No trip, nice meeting you. Thank you
Nice
so much.
meeting you. Safe trips.
Oh, thank you, appreciate it.
Just don't want you slipping on it, and it'll be a bad day.
Thank you.
Thank you, thanks for coming. Look forward to meeting you again.
Mr. Volk joining us today?
No,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll leave you with a business card. We'll pass them around in the bathroom.
thank you.
Oh, yes.
I get a phone call.
He's not here.
Seems like we don't get anything.
All right.
Safe.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Here.
Appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, is that heavy?
That's why I stayed fit.